dealing with the biggest story of the millennium. Visits to planet Earth by alien spacecraft, successful cover-up of the best data, bodies and wreckage, for 58 years.
The bottom line is I don't believe the claim of the Air Force that all sightings can be explained.
This is the biggest secret in the history of the human race, and particularly in the history of modern government.
We are being engaged as a planet and as a species by other beings.
The Canadian government is how I actually proved that the U.S. government was covering up their collection of UFO sightings and records.
America and Britain have made it very clear to a lot of countries who have the same sort of sightings and the same resources that this is something that they better not let out, not until we say it's okay.
If we would get off of this ego trip, this Western scientific ego trip, we would not become the virus of the universe that we are. Nobody really wants us out there.
The dependence on oil could be ended overnight.
We're being slowly conditioned to understand that there is life outside this planet and that we probably live in a universe and a galaxy teeming with life.
I had my own UFO sighting and said, well, case closed. There's nothing like seeing one for yourself to end the debate.
I'm absolutely sure that we are not alone in this universe.
We invite you now to come with us upon a great and wondrous journey, an adventure perhaps into your very own past, present and future. See and hear the real stories, and most importantly, be introduced to the actual individuals who have volunteered to come forward to speak the truth.
Do flying saucers exist? Are extraterrestrials real? Is there a government cover-up?
For nearly 60 years, denial has been the only official position of the governments of the world relative to UFOs, alien abductions, and extraterrestrial contactee reports. Endless debates have raged over the thousands of documented cases that have been brought forward without official recognition. Some have been monumental incidents involving hundreds or even thousands of people.
Roswell, New Mexico, USA. July the 4th, 1947. A flying disc crashed. The debris and alien bodies were flown to Wright Field Air Force Base in Dayton, Ohio. Suffolk, England. Rendlesham Forest, December the 26th to 28th, 1980. A triangular-shaped object illuminated the entire forest with white light. The object had a pulsing red light on top and a bank of blue lights underneath. It left ground traces and radioactive anomalies. This was a multiple witness sighting by military personnel. Belgium. The Belgium Wave, October 1989 to 1990. Hundreds of reports of lighted objects frequently described as enormous and triangular in shape. Air Force F-16s chased many of these objects. The Belgian government cooperated with civilian UFO investigators. Arizona, USA. The Phoenix Lights, March the 13th, 1997. A huge V-shaped object hovered over Phoenix for 10 to 15 minutes, observed by tens of thousands of people. Mexico. The Mexico Flap. Hundreds of objects appearing alone and in clusters appear throughout Mexico, observed by tens of thousands of people.
Flying saucers are real.
On the Black Vault, you can download documents that prove that the United States Air Force bases have been breached by UFOs, their restricted airspace, that missile silos have mysteriously been shut down due to UFOs hovering over the base. I think you download that and you read it, you conclude, yeah, okay, UFOs pose a national security threat to the U.S. government.
And in '52, I was an 8th grader and old enough to read for myself the big scream headlines that July about UFOs flying over the nation's capital and the Air Force planes not being able to catch them.
They're there and they're paying attention. Incidents happened in the Soviet Union before it collapsed. Incidents happened all over the northern U.S., ICBM bases, where they came down, hovered over the silos, played hell with the electronics. Pictures were taken. Hundreds of witnesses watched them. Highly classified. You'll never hear that, except from whistleblowers and big mouths like me.
Well, while I was attending Northrop Aeronautical Institute and working for Douglas Aircraft in El Segundo, California, I had heard about George Adamski, and one of the Sunday newspapers, he had his story and his pictures of contacts, plus pictures of his ships. Well, I had, by that time, seen so many during the day and the night that I felt I'd like to go up and meet this gentleman. On the weekend, he would entertain people who would come to see him, military people, engineers, scientists, people from all walks of life. He had taken some beautiful pictures of the scout craft as well as the carrier ships. I went up to see him. He had a 6-inch telescope that he used to take the pictures of the flying saucers. And in using that scope, when I finished, I was just about to take my eye off the eyepiece when there was a blue-white streak that went by, and I jerked my head up to see if I could see it, and I didn't. And I looked at his 15-inch telescope dome, which was a couple of 100 yards from his house. And there was a big flare-up blue-white light, and then it kind of closed back down. No noise. First I thought it was an explosion, but it was a little slower than that. And there was an elliptical flying saucer. It looked to me like it was hovering above the ground. So I heard it increase its frequency, and it got brighter and brighter, and it was really pretty hard to look at. And it shot straight up until it looked like one of the stars. If you've ever been to Mount Palomar at night on a dark night, boy, they're big and bright. And it stopped for an instant, and then it shot over the horizon over San Diego.
We have more than one witness who have been involved in the tracking of these objects on radar. You know, many people say, well, look, if this stuff was real, why are there no radar reports? I said, we have them. We actually have the radar tapes from the FAA.
This is not just UFOs, and this is not being visited by guys from other planets. I was to learn later that our security, our intelligence people, our military people concluded and learned we were not merely dealing with interplanetary visitation. We were being visited by guys from other star systems, which technologically, you know what that means. They're not just from another planet like Venus or Mars or somewhere. These guys are from other stars.
I'm convinced after studies since 1958 that the evidence is overwhelming that planet Earth is being visited by intelligently controlled extraterrestrial spacecraft. In other words, some UFOs are alien spacecraft. Most are not. I don't care about those. Most isotopes aren't fissionable. I don't care about the ones that aren't if we want to build a reactor.
If somebody who had the clearance to carry nuclear weapons or launch nuclear weapons saw these objects over a nuclear facility and reported it and have documents to prove it happened, this is dispositive. That's what someone who is wanting to look into this, who says, well, could this really be true and I don't know about it, they need to look at that, and we've assembled it. We have a 600-page book of top secret documents and the transcripts of these witnesses. We have videotapes.
So I began watching the newspapers for any newspaper reports. I started buying magazines that had a UFO article in the magazine and collecting these, and from those I would get names and addresses. And I often called the people who wrote the articles to get them. Then I'd go interview those people myself, and if they took pictures, I'd try to get a copy of the picture, and frequently did. And then I began trading the pictures that I already had with other people that had pictures to get more pictures, and eventually built a library of pictures, probably the largest in private hands in the world. Is over 4,000 pictures of real UFOs. Now, if I can collect that many alone as a single individual working by myself, how many pictures do you think the government has got when every government employee is a potential investigator, every agent on trained investigator, all collecting and contributing to the government file? They must have hangars full of pictures.
What Air Force Manual 10-206 says is that a U.S. Air Force pilot who sees a UFO has to report it in a particular way and manner. They outline in this form exactly how to report it. They say list the size, the shape, direction of travel, how big the object was, what were the wind conditions like. And you go through this big form and say, you know, your UFO sighting. The manual then goes on to state that you have to forward this to the NORAD installation. This is that one Air Force base that claims, oh no, we haven't collected these things since 1969. The problem is this form was last updated.
Retired from the military, I went to work for the Federal Emergency Management Agency, and I worked with them for 14 years. So I've got 42 years of government service behind me, and throughout all those years I had the very highest security classification you could have, top secret. When I was in NATO in 1963 through 1967, I had cosmic top secret, which was and still is the highest level of security in NATO. That's how I got involved in this crazy UFO.
Are any of us really prepared for the kind of paradigm shift that would come with not just disclosure, but with contact and communication with intelligences from other worlds? Is it possible that as a species we have reached the point that our minds actually filter and generate acceptable constructs which all too often become our day-to-day realities?
There is so little of your reality that is really based on truth that it's just...
Be giving glory to God. It is not just us.
If I told you that, you know, the very nature of the moon and Mars and most of the planets in the solar system is being kept from you for specific reasons, to make you think that you're completely alone and that these planets can't be colonized.
Back in the 50s, the big question was, do they come from Mars or do they come from Venus? And by the 60s and 70s, we had gotten a little more sophisticated in our intellect and our thinking, and the question became, well, do they come from Alpha Centauri or Zeta Reticuli 4, you know? Well, and then now we're up to today, and we've got even more sophisticated, and now the question is, do they come from another planet, or do they come from another dimension? Or are they perhaps time travelers? Do they come from another time, okay? And in my study of all of this, I have kind of come to the conclusion that the answer is yes.
The more you know about this field, it becomes almost paralyzing, because the more you know, the less you know. The more you know and the more open-minded you are about this, the more you realize that that every answer you find just leads to a 1,000 more questions.
Vast sums of money are being siphoned through these different agencies into the coffers of the CIA, which then forwards this money on to the DOD, and this money is funneled through the DOD and goes into the black projects which the DOD has direct oversight over. So the CIA is kind of like the bagman. It collects the money, it goes to the Department of Defense that actually administers how this money is going to be spent on different black projects. So the size, how much are we talking about? I think the best indication for just how much we're talking about here are the auditing irregularities that the Inspector General of the Department of Defense has himself identified. He identified in 3 years, it was 1998, 1999, and the year 2000. In those 3 years, they identified on average $1.7 trillion could not be accounted for in the Department of Defense budget. In other words, this was money that was being moved around in ways that could not be accounted for. And I think what that indicates is the true size of the black budget. We're looking at an infrastructure that is funded by as much as $1.7 trillion a year. Now, when you consider that the whole Department of Defense budget officially is just over $400 billion, we're talking about a vast infrastructure that is 4 times greater than the entire Department of Defense budget.
As Jack Nicholson would say, you can't handle the truth.
Is it possible that ancient and secret societies exist that have always had the real but hidden information? And have they, as a result of their ongoing familial knowledge, been manipulating and governing virtually all countries down through the centuries? Researchers point to the Illuminati and the power elite and their use of propaganda as carried by the mainstream media. Many believe that these powerful few actually control almost all information by implanting false knowledge and beliefs into our human collective reality.
The States government, the leader of the free world, is totally controlled by a wealthy oligarchy. A small handful of people that are just super rich Most of them are not even in government, but they tell the government what to do. These are the people who are behind the UFO secrecy. They don't care if you know there's ETs out there. But if you know there's ETs out there, then you will know that there is alternative technology. And this could upset their monopolies over energy, fuel, transportation, communications, pharmaceuticals. And that's what they don't want. After all, who would continue to pay all these ever-increasing prices for gasoline that's polluting the air, choking us all, killing our kids? Why would we do that if we knew beyond any shadow of a doubt that there was non-polluting energy sources out there? This is what it's all about. It comes back to the old journalistic adage, follow the money.
Not only how best to control populations, why populations need to be controlled, but ultimately affecting the technologies that are in place to do just that. Currently, 50% reduction in general of the planet's population that has been targeted for elimination.
The disclosure project is oriented towards putting together credible government documents and these witnesses so that there is an undeniable case made that this is real and not fictitious. It started really in early 1990s. And after I had briefed the President Clinton's first CIA director on this problem, it was made very clear to me that the executive branch of the U.S. government did not want to do this because, I'm quoting, the president was concerned he would end up like Jack Kennedy. I'm not kidding. That was said to me by President Clinton's closest friend.
Could it be that much of what we believe is illusion? Is it possible that the history of human civilization is not as we have been told? Have we as people been purposefully dumbed down? And have our governments only served to strengthen the bonds that bind us to our ignorance, not only of our past, but of our present and potential future?
Officials in these agencies no longer represent the best interests of humanity, but are now representing the interests of a particular extraterrestrial race that they have been compromised by. So we pay a heavy price if we don't make this open, if we don't bring in transparency and accountability into this whole process. It means that we don't know whether or not those that are behind the policies are actually implementing these policies for the best interest of humanity, which is what they claim, or for the best interest of a particular extraterrestrial race.
Some of the questions that we must ask include, are there bases on our moon? Are there structures and life forms on Mars and many of the other local planets? Have our governments made deals and treaties with other life forms that affect the future of all of us on planet Earth?
These people will continue zipping through our atmosphere, checking nuclear plants and so forth and so on. They have never been hostile. They pose no air security problems, whatever. The Air Force knows this, and the Air Force has made statements to that effect, that UFOs pose no threat.
They are here. Not just the Greys, but the others who look and act like us. Perhaps they are here to instruct us, to help us safeguard our planet.
Definitely rules and regulations that govern everything. And the councils have the history books of all of the planets and all the records. So when a planet reaches the point that it can support life, that's a very momentous time in the history of that planet. At that time, the planet is given its life charter.
We're dealing with a big, big story. It's not just them. As I said, if it was that simple, it would probably been out some time back. It's really about us. It's who we are, what we are, how we came to be, and where we might end up going sometime.
Life is never allowed to just simply spontaneously develop. That if it did, it would be very chaotic.
If we could integrate, I call it the spiritual, but the esoteric or whatever. I mean true esoteric. I don't mean religion necessarily, because there's a difference, I think, between religion and spirituality.
To produce a thinking, intelligent human being would have taken millions more years if it was happening by normal evolution than it would have taken. And it would still not have got to the point we are now. They create life on other planets because this is the way they were created. by what they call the archaic ones, the ones from the very beginning, have been doing this forever.
Mankind was developed as a species, as a spiritual being, and I think we've gotten so far away from who we really are that it's very hard for us to go back there and digest that maybe we have cosmic brothers and sisters. We fight among ourselves for diversity. I mean, if anybody walks in here and looks totally different, we fight among ourselves. And I'm thinking, oh my God, what are the ETs that are involved thinking about the way we handle ourselves with people that are so different from us? They're probably scared to death to appear because of what we might do to them. We have not handled diversity very well.
Yeah, one day, I would hope that the people of Earth would stand up and extend their hand in friendship to these people. We have never done that here on this planet. You know, we've shot at them. We've done everything. We fire radar, we fire lasers, everything. We need to say hi.
There are other extraterrestrial groups who are human-looking, such as the Pleiadians, the famous Pleiadians of Billy Meyer and others, and they are much more intent on trying to assist humanity to become free of this kind of manipulation from other races that really try to use humanity as a resource.
Let's think about it. You can't say, whoopee star kids, these wonderful advanced children have been transformed by contact from people from the stars, when in the same breath you say there's no such things as UFOs.
The question of UFOs and extraterrestrials, most people just think is something entertaining. In reality, it's something that is central to how we're going to be able to go forward as a civilization, because that issue involves sciences, technologies, energy and propulsion systems that could give us a whole new civilization.
It's terribly important the whole thing come apart, because it's all one package and it's part of our bright and very, I think, hopeful future. And I think of these star kids growing up and being our leaders, our presidents, congresspeople, senators, university professors, leaders in medicine and science and so forth. I think what brilliant and expansive future we're going to have, but we have to get from point A to point B. And this cover-up is just stultifying us in a very painful way.
Is it possible that an intergalactic federation exists, and that this collective of different member beings are in the process of offering the people of Earth membership in a federation of planets? Most importantly for all of us and our children, some of these researchers say that acceptance of their invitation to federation membership would end all war, starvation and dependency upon fossil fuel-based energy systems for our entire planet.
Part of the problem with the UFO cover-up coming apart, you've got to uncover the whole thing at the same time. You can't half uncover. People who try to only look stupid.
Degli extraterrestri, le fan...
This is his belief system.
We all have a responsibility to find out what the truth is about something like this. And it is, people have to take responsibility for looking into what the truth is. We've put together the means for people to do that. Now people have to take the initiative, and we need all the help we can get. I would ask people to help us network this to anyone and any institution that can help. The reason this is so critical is that we've reached a point in our civilization where for us to go forward as a people, we're going to have to end this kind of illegal secrecy, and we're going to have to allow this information and these technologies to get out and begin to fix many of these large problems.
I've always believed our destiny is in the stars. That's a hope that I have, that generations yet to come will travel out there and will become a part of that community. That's a dream that I won't live to see, but it's a dream I hold dear, that we'll make it, that we will survive as a species, because I think we've got some, as I jokingly say, we have some good friends in high places.